Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on B tier. This is my baseline tier, and it is the Spirit Island measuring stick. I'm really excited for this video because now I can start talking about the fun and cool things that spirits can do, and moving forward with these videos, it's going to be more positive as we get towards the stronger end of the spectrum. Spirits in this tier have challenges that they must overcome. That could mean the spirits takes too much blight in some matchups, or could be susceptible to bad RNG elements. These spirits can have powerful moments but are inconsistent in doing so. These spirits give out minimal support, or if they do not give out support, their spirit kit lacks in other ways. If supported, these spirits can rise up into A or even S tier. Starting off with number 45, we have Tactician Thunderspeaker. This is Thunderspeaker's second aspect, and it is going to replace your third growth option. And it replaces it with a power card, a presence, an energy, and an element. And what you normally have is a presence plus 4 energy growth option. So essentially, you're spending 3 energy to gain a power card as well as an element. So that is the trade-off. Compared to base Thunderspeaker, I do believe that this is just a nerf, that 4 energy is absolutely essential to playing majors, as well as consistently playing your manifestation of power and glory. You're gonna find with this specific aspect that you're gonna be very starved for energy, and it's gonna be difficult to play those 1 costs and, like I said, your manifestation. Looking at the consistency, your consistency is going to drop because you are lacking that energy needed to play those cards. The matchups across all single level 6 adversaries tend to be pretty positive, all because you do have this slight nerf. It doesn't mean you're going to be completely unplayable into adversaries. It will make games slightly more challenging than base Thunderspeaker, though. Number of spirit combos will slightly decrease just because you'll be playing those major powers as well as manifestation a lot less. Thunderspeaker is not part of high spirit power combos. The ability to give out support is fairly limited just because you don't really have support cards in your kits. You are not a tank. And taking over games is once again going to be limited because you have less energy, so you have less income to pay for those majors. The number of blight that you take will vary between matchup to matchup, and you will be able to create isolation pockets fairly easily via that right innate, manifestation, and sudden ambush. Thunderspeaker does generate a little bit of fear on the lower end, and that's mainly because most of your fear is generated from manifestation. But I probably sound like a broken record saying that you're going to be playing this card a lot less because you don't have that energy growth option, and the rest of your cards, they don't generate fear, and you're not going to be playing Voice of Thunder for 2 fear. So all of the fear that you generate will just be through the counter attacks. Is the Spirit edge case proof? Not really. Any increased damage can cause extra blights, which would cause Dawn Death, which cause extra presence destruction. How many boards are viable for this Spirit? Not entirely sure. I've played a lot of Thunderspeaker back in the day, but this is a spirit that I rarely pick up. And can the spirit clear its board? It probably still can, just not as consistent. Looking at number 44, we have Intensify Memory, and this is one of my favorite aspects in the entire game. I love Intensify, and it definitely makes memory a lot more powerful as well as more enjoyable for myself. So Intensify, it's going to replace the second special rule that memory has, and that's that special rule that you used to have allows you to prepare elements to threshold majors, or you can spend elements to threshold majors easily. And Intensify gets rid of that, and in exchange, you get this little table here that allows you to amplify all different power cards or innate powers. You can also make powers slow to fast, and you get a free moon as well as a free any element every turn. I do think that this is one of the stronger variants of memory. I'm not sure if it's the best. Currently, I have it listed as the best, but jury is still out. Mentor can do some crazy things, giving Spirit power cards, but Mentor really lacks to solve its own problems, and that's something that I value quite highly. So consistency. This is going to increase Memory's consistency quite a lot, and that's because of this +2 Earth defend. Because now your left innate here, instead of reading defend 3, it's actually going to read defend 5. And defend 5 is going to enable a lot of counterattacks that normally couldn't happen. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, if you have an Explorer Town City, should probably ready the game up here. You have an Explorer Town City here, and your defend 3 would not be able to defend against this. And likely you would just take this Ravage. But now you actually have a defend 5, and now you can fully defend that land, so now you may want to get Dahan into that land to properly counterattack. Looking at the matchups, I also believe Intensify is going to boost a lot of your matchups. And once again, it's because you're increasing that defend on the left innate. Having defend 5 every turn is massive. Also, there's a couple minors that you can pick up that completely break the game in half. A good one is Call of the Dahan Ways, where this allows you to replace an Explorer or a town with a Dahan. Because of the moon threshold here on Intensify, it allows you to do it again. So if you ever draft Call of the Dahan Ways with Intensify, you just completely destroy the whole board, because every turn you're basically creating 2 Dahan with this card, right? Because you're just going to enter a reclaim loop, and then you're also likely having a defend 5, and this will just completely destroy pretty much any adversary that you play against. You can also make it fast with the air elements. So definitely your matchups will be a lot better with the Spirit. The number of Spirit combos, it's going to be slightly lower than Mentor and slightly lower than base memory, but not by much. Mentor, you're giving out those power cards, enabling a lot more thresholds as well as synergies. This is a Spirit that's not really going to be doing that. And as I mentioned, one of the biggest strengths to base memory is you can draft cast down and then easily threshold it. This version of memory cannot do that. And some high power combos rely on memory being able to throw those crazy majors to kind of catch up. And this is an aspect that isn't going to be able to do that often. Luckily, you still have elemental teachings, which allows you to prepare an element, and then you can discard 3 elemental markers to gain those elements. So this card allows you to still threshold majors fairly easily, as long as like this is 3 elements, and then you also get 1 element off your any, so that's still +4 elements, but it's not as easy as thresholding like cast down or any of the other majors just via that special rule. Talked about spirit combos, talked about high powered spirit combos, ability to give out support. It's about the same. I mean, Study the Invader's Fear, Boon of Ancient Memories, Elemental Teachings all can give out support. It is slightly less, though, than the other aspects. Ability to tank, probably higher than the other memories. The other memories require good major drafts, and this one doesn't, just because, like I said, that defend 5 just goes such a long way. Ability to carry or take over the game, it's probably lower than base memory, just because, once again, you don't have the cast down drafts. How much blight does the Spirit take on average? A lot less, just because that defend 5, it goes such a long way. Can it create isolation pockets? Nope. Memory is never going to be able to do that. How much fear does the Spirit generate? Not that much. I'm very glad they didn't add an elemental marker that can add fear, because I think that would break the Spirit in half. Is the Spirit edge case proof? Yeah, it is. I mean, the difference between defend 2/3 and 4 and 5 is quite massive. Defend 5 is going to, like I said, enable so many more defense. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, you can use this Earth defend on any defend card that you draft, and that's just going to amplify all of those defensive powers. I'm not sure about the viability of different boards with the Spirit, and then can the Spirit clear its own board? Unlikely. I'm really excited to play Intensify. I don't think it can be any higher than at the bottom of B tier. I don't think it can drop into C tier. That's good. I'm not sure where the other memories stand. I know I have them in C tier. There might be a chance that they might be able to squeak into B tier. Looking at number 43, we have Ocean's Hungry Grasp, the aspect, the Deeps aspect. Now, Deeps is an aspect that will replace both the left and the right innate. Because you're replacing the left innate, you're going to be generating less fear, and the right innate is going to be losing, you're going to be having less drowns. In exchange, you're going to have this new token called Deeps token, and Deeps token is you're going to do damage based on the number of Deeps token and lands specifically to buildings. And then if you have at least 3 Deeps tokens and no buildings are present, you could drown all the explorers in town, or all the explorers into Han. You could push Deeps tokens, and then the land becomes part of the ocean. And if you have this last threshold, you get to repeat power again. And this right innate is going to add Deeps tokens. Now, I have this ocean rated a lot higher than base ocean, and that's because the ability to completely remove a part of the board from the game is so powerful. In addition, this aspect combos very well with other spirits. About the same as base ocean, but I actually think it's a little bit better, and that's just because Deeps tokens is doing damage to buildings, which means this combos with Badlands, it combos with other spirits' damage effects. So maybe you can have another spirit play like River, and you can have River play Massive Flooding on your board, wiping out a land, plus your Deeps damage, you might fully clear a land, and then you can easily drown it with that left innate. So looking at the consistency, I think it's about the same consistency as base ocean. You're still going to need someone to help you out, but once you start drowning lands, you will permanently decrease the number of lands that the team has to deal with, and that is going to put the team very far ahead. Now, you do have to be careful because once you start drowning lands, you're going to create more coastal lands, and that could be problematic if you're with a lure player or if you're trying to like create a pocket. Like if I am playing on board E here and I choose to drown my E3, well, now I just made this land and this land coastal lands. So now if someone's playing board A and they had pocketed these lands, you may make the game a lot more challenging for board A. So Deeps requires a little bit more coordination than base ocean because looking at this board, if I'm going to drown a land, I'm going to want to drown E2 or I'm going to want to drown E1. E3 I would never want to drown just because I'd create more coastal lands. Hopefully that makes sense. Matchups across all single level 6 adversaries, it's probably worse than base ocean just because you're dealing damage to buildings. So dealing with those England towns or I guess really it's those England towns and possibly Habsburg towns could be problematic. So slightly worse. It's not like I've seen the spirit unplayable into those adversaries. It's actually very, very strong into those adversaries. I just think the matchups are either equal or slightly worse. And I'm also not a Deeps expert. If someone's played the spirit a lot more, I'd love to hear your insight on how you think the spirit is compared to base ocean. Number of spirit combos, I believe ocean, this version of ocean is just going to have more spirit combos. Same with high spirit combos. Ability to give out support. It's about the same. Ability to tank, I'd say it's about the same. Ability to carry or take over the game, it's about the same. Really, the biggest benefit is, once again, canceling out those lands for the team. How much play on average? About the same. Creating isolation pockets, it's probably worse than base ocean just because you can actively create more coastal lands, which will get rid of isolation pockets. Your generation is slightly worse than base ocean. It is edge proof. Number of boards viable, not sure. And can it clear its board? Not really. It's going to need help. I do think that Deep's a thematic masterpiece. I think playing base ocean, I think base ocean should just be erased entirely. I really think that this is just very on theme with ocean, and it also mechanically is more interesting. Looking at number 42, we have Shroud, Branded Aspect. Now, I'm sure all of the Shroud players are going to be really happy that base Shroud is in C tier, but now we have a way to play Shroud in a higher tier, and that is Stranded. And Stranded is so good. It is going to get rid of your, I crossed it out here, but it's going to get rid of your Mists, Shift, and Flow. I hate this special rule. I think it's very confusing, and it just makes it much more simple. It says During the fast and slow phase, you get push in a presence, and then every fast phase, you get a single isolation. So this is definitely a strict buff compared to base Shroud. A single isolate goes a long way. So it's going to increase the consistency. It's also going to increase its power into a lot of matchups because isolating lands is huge into England, stopping adjacency builds, into Scotland, stopping Scotland 6, into Habsburg, stopping gathers, town gathers. It's just so strong. And then even then you have like France, where you can isolate an empty land, and if you hit, well now you don't have to deal with that build cycle. And like I said, the presence movement makes it a lot easier. But yes, I do believe Stranded is a strict buff for Shroud. Number of spirit combos, high spirit combos, ability to support and tank, all of that stays constant compared to base Shroud. Same thing with the ability to carry or take over the game. Blight taken, it'll actually take less blight just because of that. Isolation is going to keep lands a lot weaker. Your generation will be the same, edge case proof, about, I believe it will probably be slightly better. Viable, number of boards viable, not too sure. You'd have to talk to a Shroud expert. And can the spirit clear its board? Not really. Definitely Stranded is, like I said, a strict buff over compared to base Shroud. And I'm so excited to finally play some games with Shroud. This is one of the spirits that I've played pretty, not too often. I think probably have around maybe 10 to 15 games with Shroud, and I can't wait to play some Stranded on the channel. Looking at number 41, we have Earth, the Might aspect, and this is one of my favorite aspects in the entire game. Might Earth is going to replace that Earth's Vitality special role with a second innate, and this innate allows you to target yourself. It's fast. The first threshold allows you to play additional power cards, but it costs an extra energy. Threshold 2 and 3 increase your damage, and the final threshold allows you to gain power cards as well. Might Earth compared to base Earth is definitely a straight upgrade just because it's going to enable so many more combos and combinations. And really, the main reason is because Might Earth on turn 1 is allowed to play draw plus rituals. And that's if you choose G3. I believe you have to go G3 plus top track. And then this is going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this will cost 4 energy plus 1 for that plant. So now you're able to get that turn 1 repeat, and this turn 1 repeat is going to enable a lot of combos. My favorite combo is if I'm playing with the Starlight and they're playing Boon of Reimagining turn 1, be able to repeat Boon of Reimagining for myself, and I'll create a video at some point talking more in depth about that combo. And then it also Might is going to boost Rituals. So now Rituals is going to be doing 3 damage instead of 2 on this early turn, or 6 damage instead of 5. So consistency, Might is going to increase the consistency as well as increase your playability into all matchups. The number of spirit combos and high power spirit combos, as I just mentioned, getting this innate turn 1 is going to be massive, but also in the late game because your end game, instead of having 4 plays, you're going to have 5 because you have the Might innate, and that is going to enable so many more setup combinations. Ability to give or out support is going to be heavily reliant on what you draft. Usually you can't draft, or usually you can't support the team until the mid to late game. Though, like I said, you have this repeat. So, I mean, if you need to repeat like Gift of Proliferation turn 1 or turn 2, there are ways that you can. It's just dependent on the teams, the cards that they're playing. The ability to tank, Earth can tank, though it is going to be, your ability to tank is going to be a lot less compared to Resilience or base Earth. The ability to carry or take over the game, it's significantly more than base or Resilience. And that's just because this Might innate enables increased damage on all of your power cards, but really it's just having extra card play is going to be massive. A lot of times when I play base Earth, I'm going to dig for those powerful major powers that deal a lot of damage. Well, Vigor, for instance, like this might do 2 damage per Dahan plus 2 or something crazy like that, or Trees and Stones, where now this card that's doing 2 damage is now doing 4 damage, being perfect element. So Okay, how much blight does the spirit take on average? It's probably more than base Earth, but not by a lot. Ability to create isolation pockets doesn't exist. Um, though you do have a lot of disruption via draw of the fruitful Earth. So you could combo with other spirits. If the other spirits can deal with your inland towns early, you can use draw to stop a lot of builds the follow-up turn. Generating fear, a lot less. Well, it's probably, no, it's definitely more than base Earth, but it's still not, it's not going to be very noticeable. Is it edge case proof? Probably, yeah, I'm not too sure if it is or not. I mean, you don't really have defensive tools with this version of Earth. I mean, you have guard, but a lot of times I don't play it. This spirit is heavily reliant on what you're drafting. How many boards are viable for the spirits? There's a couple. I like board D. I like board E. Those boards are really strong. Boards like board A. Board A is just a terrible board for Earth. Trying to think. I think one of the new boards is pretty problematic as well. I'll have to go back and do some reassessments on the. I do want to do an Earth guide at some point, and I'll do a deeper dive when I get to that point. Can the spirit clear its own board? Yes, it definitely can, especially compared to base Earth and Resilience Earth. But yes, Might Earth, I absolutely love this spirit. It is more of a combo-oriented spirit. So if you're a player that likes focusing solely on your board, you're not going to get the most out of this spirit. This is a spirit that wants to combo with the team, and that's when you're going to see the spirit really excel. Looking at number 40, we have Sparking Lightning. And this is the final aspect for Lightning. It is also the strongest. Sparking is going to replace your Thundering Destruction Innate. In addition, it's going to get rid of your weakest card, and that's Raging Storm, and it will replace it with Smite the Land with Fulmination. And this is a power card that is going to do a single point of damage as well as add a Badlands. And you do get the Sparking Innate here. And this says Gift of the Sparking Sky. It is target any player. It's a fast power. The first threshold says once this turn, after target spirit uses a power that targets a land, they may do 1 damage to each invader in that land. This is essentially a Raging Storm. And then the second threshold is going to allow a spirit to gain a power card. And then the final threshold gives that spirit a spur. Target spirit may play a power card by paying its cost. And both of these thresholds are so strong compared to the base innate. Being able to give or to be able to have a support effect on lightning that gives power cards is going to be massive for supporting the team, as well as allowing spirits to play additional card plays. Huge. Consistency. I would say it's more consistent than base lightning. It does suck that you're losing that thundering destruction, which allows you to kill towns, but you're gaining several more drafts, especially before your first reclaim. So you'll have more looks at that defend. The matchups, I do believe Sparking has better matchups than base lightning. I'm not sure. This is one of the aspects that I haven't played that much. I have seen other players pilot it, and they tend to do better with Sparking than base lightning. Number of spirit combos and high spirit combos is going to go up significantly. Once again, you can give out power cards. You can allow spirits to play extra power cards. That's going to be massive. Ability to give out support. Once again, you still can. You also can with Lightning's Boon. Ability to tank. This is not a spirit that can tank. Ability to carry or take over the game. It's probably less than a spirit like Immense, or it's probably less than a spirit like Pandemonium. But once again, that constant support is going to add up. How much blight does the spirit take on average? I think it's usually 3 to 4, though it's going to depend on your matchups as well as your drafts. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It can, though it's going to be a lot less just because you're losing that town destroy. Normally, base lightning can kill a town via shatter and a town via that innate. This spirit won't be able to do that. Now, you do have options where you could do something like turn 1, I think it's like turn 1 G2 top, and you can play Smite, doing a damage stopping a build, and then the following turn, you G3 bottom, playing your 3 cards, and then you can hit your innate. Now you won't have the Sun because you played Smite turn 1, but you can still get a power card or lend out that support. How much fear does the Spirit generate? More than base Lightning, but less than, well, I mean, you're losing Thundering Destruction, which adds a lot of fear. But like I said, the ability to gain power cards lets you get more drafts, so you can draft more consistent fear cards. Um, Definitely Sparking has less fear than a Spirit like Pandemonium. The Spirit Edge case proved, I would say not more or less than any of the base Lightnings. And how many boards are viable? Not too sure. Usually you just want a board that can have 2 Sacred Sites that can hit your entire board. Can the Spirit clear its board? Not regularly. Looking at number 39, we have Haven River. And Haven is going to be an aspect for River, and it is going to replace your Massive Flooding Innate. And it is going to give you these Call to Sunlit Haven. Innate is a Sacred Site, power 0 range, fast power. It says E is the highest uncovered number on your energy track, and it allows you to defend E. You have the first threshold. In an adjacent land with your presence, defend E. Third threshold says, in target land or an adjacent land with your presence, gather up to E Dahan. And finally, the last threshold allows you to remove up to E health worth of invaders. Now remember, that's going to occur in the target land. I have this aspect a lot lower than Travel River, and that's just because massive flooding is so important to clearing your board. Now, Haven isn't a bad aspect, it's just worse than the Travel massive flooding variants. And part of the reason is once again, you lose massive flooding, but you also are going to be playing Boon of Vigor a lot less consistently. And that's because with the other versions of River, you're in this reclaim loop where it's coming out every turn. A lot of times, Haven is going to be playing along top track and reclaiming a lot less, and you're going to have less opportunities to play your really busted card like Boon of Vigor. So consistency is going to decrease as well as your matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. I think Haven is just worse in a lot of matchups than Travel River. I think the only exception would be it would be likely England, but the rest I think it's just worse. Number of spirit combos and high spirit combos is going to be decreased compared to Travel River, just because you're giving out Boon of Vigor a lot less, as well as you can't rely on your nuke with your massive flooding innate. Ability to give out support, you still can, it's just a lot less. Ability to tank, this is a spirit that cannot tank. At one point, Haven was an Aegis Defend where it would hit all adjacent lands. That's when the spirit was quite powerful, but now it's honestly the perfect B tier spirit. It's exactly where it should be. It's at that baseline. It's not too strong. It's not too weak. It has some flaws, and it has some points where it excels in. How much blight does the spirit take on average? 2 to 3, though it does depend on the adversary. Ability to take over the game. This is a spirit that won't be taking over the game, though you do get a couple major drafts. So if you draft a good major, you might be able to. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? Not really, just because you're going to be heavily relying on Dahan Defend and the Haven Defense to clear out lands. It's not going to generate much fear compared to regular River, Travel River. It's about the same. Is the Spirit Edge case proof? If anything, it's the opposite because it's actually less edge case proof just because you're relying on a defend and Dahan counterattacks to clear lands. So any increased aggression or increased damage may break through your defense and kill some Dahan and blight the land. How many boards are viable for the Spirit? Really, you want board A specifically for Haven, so only one board really. Though, I mean, it's still playable on other boards. It's just A. It's night and day if you have A or if you don't have A. And can the Spirit clear its board? Not better than Travel River. Looking at number 38, we have Mud. Looking at the consistency of Mud, Mud is a fairly consistent spirit. Because you have this 1-2-1 growth style, you always can default to reclaiming and reclaim looping your defend 5. In addition, you have plenty of Dahan movement via your open shifting waterways as well as your innate to constantly get those counterattack ravages that you need. So Dahan, move Dahan, counterattack, kill invaders, rinse and repeat. You're also generating quite a lot of fear with 2 fear off the innate, as well as fear from shifting and thickets. It's fairly consistent. The matchups against all of the level 6 adversaries is very favorable for Mud. Really, you only have one bad matchup, and that is Russia. The rest you absolutely destroy. The number of spirit combos and high spirit combos. The spirit combos, you can give out power cards via exaltation, but there's not much that Mud wants from other spirits. Like, you really don't want elements like boosting your innates doesn't really matter much. Extra card gains doesn't matter. The energy could play a role, like if someone gives you like an energy boon, but I find Mud doesn't really utilize support as well as other spirits in the game. And high spirit power combos, I wouldn't consider Mud a spirit that can contribute to high spirit combos. Maybe I'm wrong, just because I don't have that much experience with Mud. Um, but at least I've probably played around 50 games with the spirit, and I've never really felt like this has been the spirit that could completely take over the game when supported properly. I talked about the ability to support, the ability to tank. This isn't the spirit that can tank. You don't have a skip. Your defend is only defend 5. I already mentioned carrying or taking over the game. How much blight does the spirit take? It's actually pretty minimal. I would say about 2 to 3, always depending on the adversary. But most matchups it will only be 2, and then some will be 3. If you're playing against Russia or Habsburg livestock, it might be more like 4 or 5. Can the spirit create an isolation pocket? Um, Definitely can, just because of the special rule, which is going to prevent buildings from being built, and instead only explorers will pop up. You also have disruption via open shifting and your innate. The spirit does generate a lot of fear. You have 2 fear from your innate, 4 damage, so the innate can generate a max of 4 fear, and then you have 1, 2, 3 fear, so you can generate a total of 7 fear a turn, which is almost 2 fear cards. Is the spirit edge case proof? It is not, just because you are building explorers, so there's still going to be invaders around, and if you ever have those, so a lot of times your ravages are going to be like one explorer will be left. So if there's ever an increasing aggression or increased damage event, um, those lands will end up blighting, killing Dahan, and destroying your presence. Also, once you start losing presence, it's going to be very challenging to hit your special rule as well as your innate, and that can be pretty problematic. How many boards are viable for the spirit? I'm not sure. I do know that Mud tends to prefer to prioritize the coasts. And can the spirit clear its board? It can, just not until the mid end game. I think Mud is the perfect B tier spirit. I shouldn't say perfect, but it fits into that that summary that I had posted earlier in the video, just because like there are points where the spirit excels, but I never feel like it just dominates, takes over the game, throwing multiple actions everywhere. And it's very limited in what it can do. Looking at number 37, we have Spreading Hostility Keeper. And Spreading Hostility is going to, first, all of your sacred sites count as Badlands, or a single sacred site will count as Badlands. So if you have multiple presence in the land, you'll only have one Badlands. Your energy numbers on top track are going to be halved, and you're going to lose your 4th growth option, and you're going to gain a new growth option that allows you to move presence, gain a fire element, and then do a single damage fast. Now, this is a straight up nerf to base keeper. It's actually a very pretty massive nerf, because you're losing your possibility to double grow, and that's placing a presence via your G3 and your G4, and that's big because Towering Wrath. This is a card that's going to scale with the number of sacred sites you have, and Spreading Hostility is going to limit the amount of sacred sites you can make. In addition, it turns the spirit into this 1/1/1 spirit, and it also hurts the top track here, the energy. You really don't have a reason to go past the 2 energy. I mean, maybe you can go to the 4 energy, but really just all of this just doesn't matter. And that's because your bottom track is so strong. and you gain 1 energy off your G3 and 1 energy off your G1. So the spirit never needs energy. Remember, you just need to reach 3 energy and 3 plays to destroy any adversary. So consistency in matchups, spreading hostility, it's going to be worse in some matchups, but better in others. I find it to be better into France, into Sweden for sure, into Prussia, just because it does give you some options, some fast control options, fast damage, stuff like that. But it's going to be significantly worse into Russia, into England, um, Scotland. I'm not too sure. My guess would be it's worse than into Scotland, but not by a lot. Number of spirit combos and high spirit combos definitely is going to go down, just because now, like before, like Boona growing power, like in the mid game, you can start throwing this out every turn because you're so far ahead. This aspect is going to significantly handicap yourself. So your ability to support the team is going to be fairly minimal. The ability to tank definitely is going to decrease, as well as your ability to take over the game. That will also drop. And once again, that's because you're not going to be able to unlock like you normally can. Like normal keeper games, you're going to be at 4-3 by turn, usually turn 3. And with this keeper, you'll be at 1-3 by turn 4. So, or turn 3. So, like just significantly weaker. How much blight does the spirit take? It depends. I mean, some adversaries this is going to help compared to base keeper. Other adversaries it's not. Ability to create isolation pockets. This spirit can do it better than base keeper, and that's because fast damage is awesome. Generating fear is going to be less. Edge case proof, it's probably less than normal keeper. How many boards are viable? Probably more boards, just because you have so much presence movement. And can the spirit clear its board? I think it's going to be very dependent on the matchup. As I mentioned, spreading hostility does everything the devs wanted for keeper. It significantly lowered its power level, but it's still playable. I definitely think it ruins the growth economics for the spirit. Like I think, uh, like this option very rarely has text, and even this option does too. Like it will matter in some turns, but most of the time you won't. Unfortunately, going top track just doesn't really matter with the spirit. You should just go straight bottom track. So it gets rid of the choice for missing presence from your growth tracks. It also kills Towering Wrath. So it does a lot of bad to the spirit, but it definitely lowers its power level. So, I mean, that's what the devs wanted, and they achieved that. Looking at number 36, we have Sunbright Whirlwind. This is the third Horizon spirit. So looking at the consistency here, Sunbright is a very consistent spirit because every game, at least how I play Sunbright, it's going to turn out the same. I'm going to go presence from bottom track, from bottom track, from bottom track, and then I'm going to reclaim. And on my turn 3, I'm going to have this innate, and that innate is just going to blast through the invaders. The matchups, Sunbright is great into everything that isn't England, and that's because you're another control spirit that lacks isolates, and you generate 0 fear. So England is just going to completely cripple you. Number of spirit combos, you do have quite a lot of support with Sunlit Air giving out that range and energy, as well as Windsped Steps, which is a pseudo slow to fast that also gives energy as well. Number of high spirit combos, I'm not sure if this exists. I do play a lot of Sunbright, but I've yet to find a combination that I feel could break extremely high adversary levels. Ability to give out support, I talked about that. Sunbright cannot tank just because you are a control spirit. How much blight does the spirit take on average? It's fairly minimal. I would say 2 to 3. Very rarely is it going to be 3. A lot of times it's 1 to 2 just because you have so much control elements in the early game. Can the spirit create isolation pockets? It most definitely can via scatter and your innate. How much fear does the spirit generate? Very little. You only generate a single fear off your innate, otherwise you'll have to draft into fear cards. Is the spirit edge case proofed? Possibly. You're not relying on defense, so increasing aggression style effects aren't going to hurt you. and you have plenty of control. How many boards are viable for the Spirit? I haven't noticed a preference for boards, but I've also not paid that much attention for Sunbright. I find board C to be pretty viable, or to be probably on the stronger end, but I would need to play more games. And can the Spirit clear its board? It's going to depend on the adversary. I think Sunbright is just another perfect example of a B tier Spirit. It has some significant weaknesses. Not generating fear is a huge weakness. Um, but it also can do some very strong things. And this is a Spirit where if you get supported just a little bit, like a single proliferation, a single element, it can go a very long way. I also love Sunbright. This is my favorite Horizon Spirit out of the group. Looking at number 35, we have Lair. Now, Lair is a strict nerf compared to base Lure, and that is because, one, Lair is going to get rid of your second special role, which is going to be critical into matchups like HME and Russia. It also is going to get rid of all of your starting presence. So now, you're only going to have a single presence, and that is your Incarna to start the game. That means if the spirits go blighted, or if you need extra targeting, you no longer will have that because you don't have those starting presence. So the consistency is going to drop with Lair, as well as your matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. I think Lair is just worse than base Lure. Now it's not like this adversary or this aspect is unplayable. It's just that it's just weaker. Spirit combos and high spirit combos is going to decrease, as well as your ability to give out support. And that is because you lost that special rule here. And you've also lost those presents that you can place across the board, such that you can utilize your innates or your targeting and stuff like that. Because if I place this presence, like before I would have 3 starting presents on my board, and then I could place presents on other boards. Well, now I'm going to have to place those starting presents, not starting, but like my first couple growths, those presents will have to go on my board because I'm going to need to impact lands on my board. Lair is not a spirit that can tank, and is not a spirit that can take over the game. How much splice does Spirit take on average? I would say it's about 2 to 4, though I'm not entirely sure. It does generate a decent amount of fear just because you generate fear via perils, swallowed, and your left and right innate. It is not edge case proof because, like I said, you're starting with a lot less presence on the board. So if you get a bad blighted event or a bad blighted event or a bad blight card, that could cause a lot of problems for you. How many boards are viable for this spirit? My guess is you're probably going to want to pick a board that has a single inland land that's adjacent to the most coasts. So all 3 of these boards would be pretty weak Lair boards. A good Lair board would be a board like board A, where you can put your Lair maybe in A4 and can hit all of those coastal lands. And can the spirit clear its board? The answer is yes, but I'm not sure how frequently or at what point. I think they did a great job nerfing Lair. This was a aspect that they had previewed to the public, and then they made a bunch of nerfs at the end of it. And I think those nerfs really brought it down into B tier. It used to be into A tier, but it generating less, like basically no fear, as well as losing your starting presence, make you highly susceptible to those edge cases and ability to close out the game consistently. And finally, the last spirit in this video will be number 34, Breath of Darkness. And this is the first nature incarnate spirit, and it also is, in my opinion, the weakest spirit. Now, I do think it's also the best designed, or one of the best designed of the expansion. So let's talk about consistency. So darkness is a very odd spirit in that it has a finite number of abducts, and as a result, you can get fairly consistent results. Now, if you ever get one of those bad events that may be increasing the number of invaders on your board or causing an extra build, that can cause a lot of problems for you because you have a finite number of abducts. Your matchups across all single level 6 adversaries. I've seen the Spirit struggle into Russia as well as HME. It seems to do pretty well into the other adversaries, though if those edge cases occur, you can find yourself falling pretty far behind. This is a Spirit that has a lot of Spirit combos as well as high Spirit combos. And that's because you do have this card, Reach from the Infinite Darkness, which allows you to abduct other presence, which can allow you to relocate those spirits, as well as giving that extra range. In addition, you're going to be creating beasts via that Right Innate, which could help combo with beast spirits. And if other spirits could combo with you, if you place your presence in another spirit's land, and then you can use them as a dump land. The ability to tank, you are not a spirit that could tank, but you can give out support. The ability to carry or take over the game is going to be largely dependent on your combo. If you do have a dump land, you can hyper pocket on your board, and that would be via that left innate, damaging and abducting a lot of invaders into the endless dark. I did mention you can create those isolation pockets, and you generate a lot of fear via that right innate. Being able to generate 8 fear from 1 innate is huge, especially in that mid to end game. Now, I mentioned it is not edge case proof, and you can get screwed by so many events. You also are a Strife Spirit via Terror the Hunted, and Strife Ignores or Stricken could really cause problems for you. I did skip over how much blight does the spirit take. Usually, I've seen it take between 2 and 4, but some matchups I've seen it take quite a lot. It actually holds the record for me of most blight taken in one of my games, and that number is 36 blight taken by a single spirit. And now of course we ran out of the blight pool. I think at around like once it had taken 20 blight, but I just kept counting because I thought it was absolutely hilarious to see a spirit take this much blight into Russia 6. Let's see. We talked about edge case proof, number of boards that are viable. I'm not sure. I can't accurately assess this. This is a spirit that I've never played still, even at the point of making this video. Can the spirit clear its board? It very well can. This is a spirit that's going to want to hyper pocket. It's going to want to combo with other spirits that are pocketing as well. Even though it is the weakest NI spirit, I do think they did such a great job designing it. From what I've seen, it feels like there's so many different builds. There's major power builds, there's minor power builds, mixed builds. It feels like your actions really matter. It never feels like the spirit takes over the game unless resources are dumped into the spirit, and I feel like that's how spirits should feel. It also doesn't feel like you're incredibly weak into matchups. They really did an excellent job, and I can't wait to finally play some games with this spirit. This will conclude this video. In my next video, I will continue B tier. If you like this video, like, subscribe for more content. I will see you guys in the next video.